Richard Leitch and Ben Giblett. While these panellists are coming up, I was primarily asked or invited to attend and present and provide the greyhound racing journey that's been a challenge over the last 18 months or so in New South Wales. But today I was asked to also facilitate this session, which I understand is completely unique. It's never been done before. So I want to share with you, ladies and gents, that if this goes well, it was completely my idea. If it goes poorly, I had nothing to do with it. With that said, from my naive experience in terms of live export, one of the vacuums of information that seems to happen is we never hear from the people who are actually on board these vessels doing the doing. So this is a unique opportunity to share directly with people who are dealing with some of the issues that I'm genuinely interested in, and asking questions is something that I've done for many, many years and will continue to do in the interest of animal welfare. So can I introduce Renee Willis. Renee is a veterinarian, and after 10 years of completing her degree, began working on live export ships as a stocky on some short-haul voyages to Indonesia and Malaysia. Renee then completed her stockperson's accreditation and AAV registration in 2015 and has been working as a shipboard veterinarian ever since. Renee is currently enrolled in a PhD through Murdoch University, where she's working on the MLA LiveCorp Welfare Indicators research project that aims to develop a monitoring tool for recording the welfare and performance of livestock throughout the live export supply chain. Holly has undergraduate degrees in agricultural science and veterinary science. Holly has been an accredited AAV since 2010, working in both preparation and on board. And I've got a question for you, Holly, about that. Holly is also the Compliance and Welfare Manager at Harmony Agriculture and Food Company. Richard Leitch, ladies and gentlemen, undertook his first livestock export voyage 18 years ago, sailing on the Danny F2 from Fremantle to Egypt. After a number of years of stockman work on board, he continued shipboard work and oversaw the care of livestock in market for 10 years. Richard is currently employed with Fair's Rural, an integrated supplier of red meat and agricultural products that sees him involved in all aspects of animal husbandry and production, as well as pre-shipping, quality control, pre-shipping depot work, including protocol treatments, as well as optimising feeding and nutrition of livestock for expert. And last but by no means least, Ben is currently employed as the Export Operations Manager for Wellard's China Division and has worked for the company for over 10 years. During this time, he has worked across all aspects of the supply chain, from logistics, pre-export quarantine, in-market and on-board vessels for more than 5 years. During his time with Wellard, Ben has sailed on over 40 voyages, both long and short haul, transporting sheep, buffalo, dairy and beef cattle. I'm going to join you, and as I wander over, the immediate question for me, having learnt about your backgrounds, is you must have a range of employment opportunities outside live export. It's a question for each of you. Why is it that you do this job?
I think I started working, I was interested in working with production animals, and I jumped on board a ship sort of for the adventure of it to start with. I think I've continued in the industry because I have found it to be really progressive. I'm learning a lot. I think there are lots of career challenges, but I sort of feel that I'm moving forward in my career, and the industry is always affecting change, and to be part of that change, it's a satisfying career role.
Thanks, Steve. I came to the industry as a burnt-out horse vet, looking to not be around people, to tell you the truth. And I found real meaning in working in the agricultural industry, being an agricultural scientist and a veterinarian, working with exporters who really embraced the advice I gave, and being involved in pre-preparation, then being involved on board, and further now being involved in market. I've been really privileged to have seen the whole supply chain and worked with exporters and for exporters to really initiate change.
Yeah, good morning. I started at a sheep feedlot in 2005, and I always wanted to see how it was all going right through the supply chain. I loved working in the feedlot, but I wanted to pursue a bit more. done my first voyage to the Middle East and just was hooked. I think I was back in country for less than a week and I kept going for almost 5 years straight, and just enjoyed it, the crew, the cattle, the sheep, the whole process. Getting to spend time in markets at the other end, following them all right through. I just enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ben. I'm pretty much the same. I enjoy looking after the livestock on the ships to the very best that you possibly can. There's no better feeling than turning up in a foreign country with a shipload of stock that look outstanding, your ship's all clean, everybody comes on board and everybody's happy and impressed and pleased with, the outcome. Things have come a long, long way. It used to be fairly rough and ready sort of an industry, but now we're really at the top of our game. I think we're getting magnificent results. Everything's going really well on the ships. The communication between the crew and the staff and the stockies is outstanding now. It's a good industry. It's good fun. There's lots of opportunities and lots of interesting things going on.
So, if we reflect on that, thank you for those comments. Things do go well when they are going well, but we all know, including working at the RSPCA, that not everything does go well. Not everything is able to be satisfactorily controlled, if you like. Given the challenges that each of you have in your respective roles, in areas that you can control, as against areas that you can't control, I'm interested in when an incident occurs on board, what ability do you have, or what levels of influence do you have to actually affect change on board as incidents are occurring?
Yeah, look, I feel like my input is definitely worthwhile. I think, communicating and dealing with problems on board, we can really make a change. I certainly, a bit the same as Holly, came to the industry as a burnout horse vet, and in private practice in general, I felt that if things needed to change, I had very little ability to influence the way clients handled their animals. I didn't have a lot of authority. I don't sort of need a lot of authority on the ships, but it is there if it is necessary. But look, talking to people and sharing your skills and training with other people can make huge influences.
A lot of the things that go wrong, it's never just one single little thing that goes wrong. It's always a combination of things that are going wrong. So if you can plan ahead and keep track of your weather forecasts and keep up to speed with keeping your ship clean and tidy, and making sure that you're minimising any possible risks. When something goes wrong, it's a lot easier to react. You're already sort of 3/4 of the way through solving a problem because you're prepared. So it's, there's not much you can do about running into a container or things like that. But if your ship's clean and you've got your fodder organised and you know what you're doing, then any little breakdown, any little thing like that, it's just part of the daily routine. You just carry on with what you're doing and it doesn't become a major drama.
So talking of major dramas, Holly, your work in preparation of stock prior to loading, again, everyone's got pressures, everyone's got margins, everyone's got clips along the way in terms of the complete journey. How important is preparation of these stock before they go on board? And then if that preparation hasn't been undertaken satisfactorily or appropriately, what does that mean for you guys?
Well, there's a good saying out there, bad stock stay bad. And the biggest part of the industry is to do adequate preparation, and that may be in all the way down to the producers, to the buyers, to vaccination protocols, to quarantine, and then to communication with the AAVs and stockies that are going on board. Great example, Renee went on a vessel that I worked with her recently. We took her to the feedlot beforehand. She got to know how those animals have been prepared. We had a group of cattle in a higher weight range that were given a higher stowage factor on the ship, so more space. So it's all about risk assessment of the type of livestock we're loading, and then putting plans and contingencies in place for those livestock. I suppose I call it a biological commodity, I think, as mentioned to you earlier. And as a compliance manager for an exporter, I'm a moral compass and a technical advisor for them, and that is predominantly in the preparation and then planning for the importer and their requirements as well. It's not profitable to have poor compliance, and that's not the outcome that the exporters are looking for.
What about from a stockie's perspective? How much harder is it if these animals haven't been prepared for you guys?
Well, if they're not prepared well prior to loading, you're chasing your tail your whole way. And it comes down to the time in quarantine, what they're being fed in quarantine, like you say, depending on the length of the voyage, whether they have had the correct protocol and an upkeep of feed and good feed. You know, the whole pre-prep is 100% the key to a successful voyage, really, I believe.
So can I talk about a potential elephant in the room, and that is some of the controversies that occur. Relax, it's okay, it's okay. Densities. I'm interested in this issue of density. For those that are clearly not on board, don't have access to you guys to understand exactly what's going on as an incident is occurring, I'd like to know what level of control or influence do you have at moving stock around in the event that there's a weather event that you couldn't foreshadow or you couldn't plan for? What can you do?
That's what our job is, mate. That's what we do all day, every day, is prepare for a weather event, or you get cattle coming on board and they look like they're going to struggle a little bit if they're not in a good ventilated area. You move them to the best possible situation for those cattle. You know, there's always options of moving one or two around and that, but, you know, all this is done in full conjunction with the captain and the chief officer and the crew, you know, so everybody's working together. You know, sometimes you'll be doing your normal work on the daily rounds and a crew member will say to you, Chief, have you seen this one over here? You know, not looking too good. You go and have a look, and that guy will come to you the next day and the next day and the next guy, and, you know, next thing you know, your crew's doing half your job for you, and it just makes the whole lot more sort of compatible, everybody working together, and you get a much better result. But, you know, stowage and density is not such a big thing at the moment because there's not enough cattle to fill a ship anyway. So.
Fair point, fair point. But given that's not always the case, I think it's important that people, particularly outside the industry, get a better understanding of what levels of influence and ability you guys do have on board to try and minimise some of these mortalities along the way. Talking of being outside of the industry, when a crisis is happening, what would be your biggest challenge on board?
I think handling yourself. You know, you're probably likely to be fatigued, and it's likely to be hot, and losing your cool isn't going to help. You should, as Richard have said, have prepared the ship as, you know, to be as safe and as resistant as possible. But yeah, working in close confines with livestock and managing your high standards of stockmanship and your communications with other people and considering your own health and safety as well. You know, I think it can be, if the sea's moving and you're trying to deal with stock and trying to deal with crew who are probably hot and tired as well, just always checking yourself and maintaining that level of professionalism.
Richard, you mentioned earlier that, you know, back in the old days it was rough and ready. How is it, because I'm still trying to get my head around this, how do you get around the cultural challenges on board when you are one or two or three of many, many tens of people? How do you deal with that? How do you actually get the support that you need to deal with issues that are unravelling on board?
I would say that nobody on board wants anything to go wrong. Everybody's wanting the best possible outcome. Nobody's going to sit on their laurels and say, you know, oh dear, the shit's hitting the fan, let's go and have a cup of tea. Everybody always does their best. You know, the communication is paramount to the whole thing. There's a limit to what you can do on your own if you've got 20,000 cattle, but if you've got everybody working together, then things naturally just sort of roll on and everything comes together when you're working as a team. The communication was appalling back in the old days. That's the biggest change, I think, is that everybody now is working for the same goal, you know, the very best possible outcome, and, you know, so it's positive.
If I can add to that, the training that's gone into the industry and to overcome some of those cultural and language barriers, and similar to what David Beattie said earlier, I think when the Australian crew or load vessel, it's synonymous. The crew knows that, you know, welfare is at the top of the priority, and you'll often see the crew have their sheet flappers ready, and there'll be no noise as soon as you walk onto the vessel. So I think there's been a lot of industry work in that space, and it's a credit to the fantastic crews that we now have on board.
I actually think that's one of the best parts of the job. I think you can see from the photos, you know, it's a bit of a privilege to be able to live and work with people from all over the world. There aren't many other jobs where you can develop friendships with people from the Swat Valley or from, you know, Croatia, Philippines, and you do work with these people, you know, from time to time and build up some pretty good relationships with them. You're working and living together on the ship for a month or so. And really you do find that you've got common goals. Everybody wants the animals to perform well and to have the best trip possible. So I actually think it's really quite rewarding.
So given the very existence of this conference and the ability to have a dialogue and keep some communication going, where to from here for you guys? What's next on your radar? There's been a lot of talk about preparation, planning, communicating, but what's next?
Well, I think that the way it's moved in the last 10 years since I started in the export game, I think it's only going to move up in terms of the way we do things. You know, the development of apps and being able to trace more. We've got a veterinary app now, you know, Renee's, the handbook, Renee's working on another project as well. I think, and just the younger youth coming through into the industry, there's a lot of younger people coming through with amazing minds, a lot of rural backgrounds, and they want to see this work as well. So, you know, I think in another 10 years, we're going to be another 10 years in front again, for sure.
Well, ladies and gents, I think we're being wound up. Is there maybe one question from the floor? Yes.
Stand by, Peter.
Peter Arnold, veterinarian, many voyages over 30 odd years. I'd like to ask the expert panel, do they have a plan? Have they ever thought about, and what would they do if a ship has a critical fire, engine room fire, and the order is to abandon ship? What happens to the animals, and what is the plan? And what is this industry's plan? It's happened twice or three times that I'm aware of. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Anyone offer a comment?
Look, I think in incidents like that, you really do need to do what the captain tells you to do. There is a hierarchy on the ship. We're there to look after animal welfare, but the overall the overall ruling body on the ship is the captain, and he's responsible for the safety of the crew. I think if you were to start running around and trying to throw your weight around, it's just going to be putting people's lives at risk. And I don't know enough about the situation in the engine room to start calling shots about what would happen in that sort of situation. So really, I would be following the guidance of the captain.
I think that's a pretty wise response. In the end, you take instruction, right? I mean, that's not dissimilar to incidents where our inspectors are out there dealing with all sorts of emergencies, and their lives, it's a fact, their lives come first. Our inspectors deal with some very unusual situations and often things that they can't control, but if it comes down to human welfare against animal welfare, the human welfare has to come first. It's a reality. So, Ladies and gents, with that said, could you please thank these guys with a round of applause, and thank you.